Hi, MJ.
Hello, Debbie. How are you, honey?
Well, I am very, very happy to finally get to speak with you. I have been such an admirer of your work, going back to the days of Solomon Kane.
Oh, thank you, honey. That's very kind of you. I'm very proud of that little movie.
I loved that movie, and I was so upset they didn't do well enough to get us sequels in a franchise.
Well, hey, you and me both. Because considering the crappy movies that do get sequels, it was like, why can't my movie? You know, it's tied up in rights. It's all about that as well. I think Solomon Kane probably will see the light of day again. I know who now owns the rights, and I think they're trying to get something off the ground. And I said to them, if you do something without me, I'm going to be heartbroken. I have a plan. I had a whole plan of movies and stories for him. But yeah, that is life. We have to move on.
Yeah, I fell in love with that, and James is phenomenal in that role.
Oh, totally. I mean, he was born for that part.
Yes.
And he gave it his everything. His everything. I mean, I do think, I'm bound to say it because it's my movie, I do think it's the best thing he's ever done.
And I actually wrote that, and I emailed immediately to the publicist at that time. That was the best thing he had ever done. And I maintain that based on everything he's done since.
I do. I totally agree with you. I think I asked him a few years ago, I haven't spoken to him for a while, I said, do you want to come back? And if we did another one, would you come back? And he was like, I think I might be too old for one of your shoots. Because the problem is I do shoot pretty tough shoots. And James Lane, he's getting on a little bit, and he's got a couple of more kids, and he likes his family life, and I don't know that he'd want to get back into the kind of physical shape and do the horrible things I do to him.
Well, talk about hard shoots. I mean, here you are, you go back to your roots as a wildlife photographer, bring us endangered species, much as you did with Rogue. You're back in the desert, you're in Kenya, you're in Africa, and with endangered species, you're doing it, shooting during a pandemic lockdown. Talk about a hard shoot, MJ. My God.
Well, those things are true. It was a hard shoot. It was a hard shoot to get together because of the pandemic and because of the difficulties in traveling and everybody's sort of fears of the unknown of what was going on. But once I was there in Kenya with the team, and we'd done our little COVID bubble, and we'd isolated, we'd all had our tests, and we were all clear. We were literally living out in the wilderness of Amboseli National Park and in Samburu in northern Kenya with, just working together. It was a small crew, it was a small cast, and I shoot in this very kind of, immediate, handheld, this is the world, let's make the most of it kind of way on my little movie. And it was just wonderful. I mean, it was hard. It was physically hard. It's physically difficult countries to shoot in. They're not much in the way of roads. Mm-hmm. Not much in the way of logistical support. But if we're all prepared to kind of muck in and get it done, which everybody was, cast and crew, then it becomes this beautiful. It's kind of unifying experience, and that's what Endangered Species became for me. I loved it. I'm very proud of it. It was an 18-day film. It was shot really quickly. We had very little resources, very, very little money. It's the lowest budget thing I've ever done, I think. Even though I think it's probably a smaller budget than my first movie.
Oh, my God.
But kind of I didn't care. I don't make these movies that are like Rogue and Endangered Species, and hopefully the next one that I'm going to make. I don't do them for money. I do them because I love the experience of making the films. I like to be able to have the conversation that the films engender. So it was wonderful.
Well, I have to tell you, I love the film. And you don't need a lot of money when you're working in an environment like that with those beautiful landscapes. And you've got Brendan as your DP. You don't need much more than that.
Not really. You need a good story and some great actors to give you the foreground. But the world is everything.
Yeah.
And, Brendan Barnes, who shot Rogue for me as well, is this young, we call him Bugsy, this young South African director of photography, who I think has a huge career ahead of him. He's actually in a South African punk band when he's young. It turns out he's very famous. But it's true. He and I just kind of have this great language together. There's nothing he won't try for me. There's nothing we can't do together. I'm incredibly proud to help discover this young guy, and I'm going to keep using him. But yeah, because he's South African, the landscape, he owns the landscape.
Yeah.
He owns the country. And even though we were shooting in Kenya, it's still in his bones. The African dust and the dirt is there, and it's kind of wonderful.
Yeah.
Very, very proud to have made this film look so good on such a small budget,
It looks beautiful, MJ. And I have to say, the only work of Brendan's that I had known other than Rogue was Mia and the White Tiger.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's one of the films I saw of his on his showreel.
Yeah, I mean, just absolutely wonderful there. So I'm not surprised you've got somebody that is familiar with wildlife in a wild situation, which I'm sure is something that you have to be concerned about when you're going even into preserves. And
totally. I mean, we whenever we went into the reserves, we had to have the rangers with us all the time in order to keep an eye out for the elephant and for the buffalo and the hippos that populate all these places. I mean, I never thought that. I mean, it's a kind of dream come true for me because I started in natural history filmmaking when I was a teenager. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a wildlife vet. So I ran wildlife hospitals. I was a vet's assistant.
Aww.
I did in the UK when I was a teenager. I was on TV talking about science and nature because it's an area that I have a lot of love and knowledge of, and trying to find a way of synthesizing my desire to blow stuff up and shoot guns and make conservation stories. Rogue and Endangered Species are a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when we were shooting out in the wilderness, we had to have rangers all the time because the elephant would just wander onto our film set. And much of it's fantastic. They're an elephant. They also get in the way, and they're quite dangerous. I never thought that too many elephants would be a problem that I'd have in any of my film shoots.
In 35 plus years as a film critic, I have never spoken to a director who has had that issue before.
Really?
That is a first, MJ. But
there you go. That's your headline.
Too many elephants. That's the thing.
But the joy of it was just to be serious for a second. Is that when we were shooting Amboseli in Kenya is in the shadow of Kilimanjaro, and so I think it's a globally famous place for its elephant population.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to take a photograph of an elephant in front of Kilimanjaro, which is kind of the holy grail wildlife photograph. So I have done that. I ticked that off my bucket list.
Wow.
But more than anything is that the movie doesn't require elephant, it required rhino. There are very, very, very few rhino left in Kenya. And I didn't want elephant, but all the time there are elephant around because the populations have exploded so well because the Kenyan Wildlife Service have done such a good job of driving out the poachers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and during COVID as well, they'd had so many baby elephants born, even though there's no tourism dollars over there right now. So they're all of these countries which rely on tourism are struggling so much. And poaching is becoming an issue again because it's the only way the local populations can make any money.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a real issue happening right now because of this global pandemic and the death and destruction of these megafauna, which are so rare in Africa. So yeah, I mean, wherever you go and however you look at cultures, it's constantly changing and evolving.
Well, and that's something I love about this story, MJ, that you and Isabel put together with the script, and the fact that we've got the hunters becoming the hunted here in a great sense, but you dial in on the rhinos, and that is such a big issue in Africa. Is the rhino poaching, and I interviewed actually a Zimbabwean officer, anti-poaching officer. I interviewed him a few years ago.
Amanda, was it?
No, Chris Moore.
Okay.
It was for the documentary Trophy, and I even talked to John Hume, who has that big rhino preserve where he wants to legalize selling rhino ivory. But
luckily the South African government is making moves to make all of that illegal again now.
Yes. And,
Because my last movie, Rogue, was about lion farming.
mm-hmm.
And last week, the South African government announced they're going to make that illegal, which is fantastic news. And obviously, I've been following the conservation stories since I was a kid. The rhino thing is very, very interesting because it ebbs and flows depending on what the cultural demand for it is. So in the 70s and 80s, rhinos were being killed for their horns to be used for the handles of Yemeni daggers, ceremonial daggers.
Yeah.
And then it's moved into being used in traditional medicine in Southeast Asia and China. Vietnam is a big market. China is a big market. And the argument about this is not necessarily right for the interview about a movie, but the argument about farming rhino for their horn to supply a market which exists anyway versus making that farming illegal so that the only way to get them is to kill wild rhino, it's a very, very complex conservation issue. Right? Particularly as rhino horn is just fingernail and it grows back. So if you harvest it, it doesn't damage the animal. Ivory is very different. Mm-hmm. Ivory kills an elephant. Full stop. You can't get ivory without destroying an elephant. The rhino population is so critically endangered now. There's 2 northern white rhino left on the planet in Kenya. That's it. There's no more.
Yeah.
They will go. Right? Black rhino, again, critically endangered. So South Africa still has the biggest white rhino population in the world, and they breed relatively well in captivity. So the conversation around them is always complex. In my movie, Jerry O'Connell's poacher character, makes a case.
Yeah.
Not a good case in my opinion, but his character makes a case. He says, why can't indigenous peoples, use the natural resources? Who are we as Westerners to say that you can't? Mm-hmm. We've killed all our megafauna, right? So we look at this, we're on our high horse and our soapboxes. The truth of the matter is we've already long since destroyed all of our animals. Why do we get to say what other people do with theirs? And I think it's a conversation that should be had. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm on the side of don't kill them. I don't like trophy hunting personally.
Right.
I don't know that trophy hunting dollars do help conservation. I don't know if they go to the right places. But you can't just be blind to the reality of the world. The conversation has to be had in a grown-up way, and what the best solution is.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that really stands out with your film, with Endangered Species, because you do open that conversation, but you tell it in such, I love the metaphor of a family, because rhinos, and you have the mother rhino and the baby rhino who's left alone. It's the whole idea of family, and you bring in that metaphoric tie, which is so strong, especially the idea of a mother. And Rebecca's performance as Lauren is outstanding. And the fact that even as her sugar levels are going crazy and she's slipping into a diabetic coma, she is still trying to stay aware and awake for her children. And
absolutely. Well, it's all about, and weirdly enough, Rogue was the same thing. It was about a mother's love for her youngsters and that unbreakable maternal bond. And I think that's exactly what, it's the most powerful and profound thing in nature, isn't it? The bond of a mother and their children. And, it's there to be seen in Endangered Species if you want it. It's also the notion that, the family unit is everything, but it can be broken. It's so fragile in many ways. Mm-hmm. And the father, and Philip Winchester, who plays the dad, and I love his performance in this because it's very different for him. But this guy who's been blinded to what true value is,
yep.
He says in the end, he's like, it's not about money, it's not about things, they mean nothing. Because once it's all gone, the only conversation we as a species should be having is the planet is dying, how do we fix it? Mm-hmm. Not even species are going extinct. The life support system of everything is slowly fading, and it's happening on our watch.
Yeah.
And a man who works in the fossil fuel industry is culpable for that. And yes, nobody knew, and now we know, and now we have to fix. And I think we can science our way out of it, but we just have to have the collective willpower to do it.
Oh, absolutely. This is a fabulous conversation, MJ. I've got to ask you about the importance of your team that you've worked with before on Rogue. Andrew as your editor, Scott's score is fabulous, and of course Brendan. You've worked with them before, you bring them back for this. Working in conditions like this, with hyenas and, and leopards and giraffes and rhino and elephants. What is the importance of having a core team like that and the familiarity for a dangerous shoot like this?
Well, it's entirely about trust, isn't it? You build, remember, Andrew McRitchie edited Solomon Kane, so I've known him since then. And he's done some strike back stuff for me as well. I love Andrew. We got on really well. It's all about building family. I like the experience of making the movies more than any other aspect of filmmaking. I like to be there with people, with my cast and my crew. So every time I find somebody who kind of just gets me, and obviously I'm a difficult person to get. I'm a trans woman. I've changed a lot over the years. There's lots of things to deal with when you deal with me. Anybody who gets that and embraces it, it becomes part of my world, and they become part of my film family. And that's all I've ever wanted. And just by the way, there were no real rhinos, there were no real hyenas, there was no real leopards. It's all digital work. Because I won't have real animals on my set if I can avoid it, because I think it stresses them out too much. I don't think in a world where digital creatures can exist, it's not really morally defensible to have them. And they can't act anyway. So, but just to speak to the crew of it, like it's about getting my real family with me and then my film family, and then I'm happy.
Well, your film family, your real family, especially since you have Isabel, you're working with Isabel. I can't wait to see what you do next. I would love to see this story and this conversation continued into a future film from you.
If I can, I will. I'm about to start prepping the third of these little kind of conservation action movies, and hopefully we can have a longer conversation in maybe in another 6 or 8 months.
Oh, I would love it, MJ, because I loved Rogue and now Endangered Species. I look forward to the next conservation one. We need more filmmakers who understand it and who are telling this story and tying it in with the human connection.
Thank you, Debbie. You're very kind.
Oh, thank you, MJ. An absolute joy, and I can't wait for the next time.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.